Let's be clear. The perfect crime you see in the movies, it doesn't exist. If it did, we wouldn't be here talking about it because we wouldn't even know it happened. A truly perfect crime is a ghost. It's a murder disguised as a heart attack, a theft that looks like a clerical error. It's a crime that is never even detected. But what does exist are the masterpieces of malevolence, crimes so perfectly tailored to the world they were committed in, they became functionally unsolvable. They are ghosts of a different sort, born from the blind spots of their time. They're not about a single, brilliant act. They represent a temporary, terrifying equilibrium between a specific type of criminal mind and the systemic limitations of law enforcement and science at a given moment in history. Think of it like this. In 2009, thieves in Germany stole $6.8 million worth of jewels. Police found the perpetrator's DNA all over the scene. Case closed, right? Wrong. The DNA belonged to one of a pair of identical twins. Since forensics couldn't tell which twin it was, and both denied it, no one could be prosecuted. The crime wasn't perfect because the thieves were invisible. It was perfect because it exploited a fundamental weakness in the legal system's ability to prove guilt. That equilibrium, that temporary state of perfection, is now being shattered, because the thing about ghosts is, science is getting very, very good at hunting them. To understand how these crimes work, you first have to understand the engine that drives them. We're not talking about your average criminal. The FBI has a classic model for this, the organized-disorganized dichotomy. Disorganized crimes are messy, impulsive, and leave evidence behind. But organized crimes are premeditated, meticulously planned, and the crime scene is often chillingly clean. The perpetrators, according to this model, are antisocial, but they absolutely know the difference between right and wrong. They just don't care. They feel no remorse. This profile aligns almost perfectly with what we know about psychopaths, and here's the most important thing to understand. Their greatest weapon isn't a high IQ, it's social camouflage. Psychopaths look and act normal. They can be your charming neighbor, your married co-worker with kids and a dog. They are masters of impression management, knowing exactly what to say to disarm you. This isn't just about cleaning a crime scene. It's about performing normalcy so effectively before and after the crime that they are never even considered a suspect. They build an alibi not just of location, but of character, and their motivations can be terrifyingly abstract. In 1924, Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, two wealthy and brilliant college students, murdered a 14-year-old boy. Their reason? Simply for the thrill of it, to prove they could commit the perfect crime. A century later, Brian Kohberger, a PhD student in criminology, was charged with the brutal murders of 4 Idaho college students. He had studied under a renowned expert on serial killers. An ex-FBI agent noted he would have learned about the pitfalls to try to avoid. This points to a chilling evolution. For some, the academic study of how to catch criminals becomes a training manual for how to become one, weaponizing knowledge of the system against itself. These are the minds we're dealing with, detached, strategic, and hiding in plain sight. And in the 20th century, they found the perfect canvases for their work. Los Angeles, January 15, 1947. A mother, walking with her child in a vacant lot, sees what she thinks is a discarded mannequin. It's not. It's the body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, soon to be known to the world as the Black Dahlia. Her body had been severed in half with surgical precision, a procedure called a hemicorporectomy. It was posed, drained of all blood, and scrubbed clean. There was not a single drop of blood at the scene, meaning she was killed elsewhere and dumped. The killer's actions were not just violent, they were a deliberate assault on the investigative process of the 1940s. Back then, forensic science was in its infancy. Frances Glessner Lee, the mother of forensic science, was just beginning to train investigators with her famous nutshell studies, tiny detailed dioramas of crime scenes, because most detectives had no formal training and would routinely contaminate evidence. The investigative toolkit was primitive. The FBI had a massive manual fingerprint library of over 100 million cards. Using a primitive fax machine called a sound photo, they impressively identified Short's prints from a prior arrest in just 56 minutes. But that only named the victim. Blood typing was limited to the ABO system, which could only exclude a suspect, not prove their guilt. There was no DNA. The entire investigative process relied on finding a primary crime scene and the physical evidence within it. The Dahlia killer systematically denied them both. By creating a sterile body at a secondary dump site, he destroyed the very foundation of a 1940s murder case. He weaponized forensic ignorance. The press swarmed the scene before it was secured. The killer sent taunting notes and a package with Short's belongings, all wiped clean with gasoline, to destroy any prints. The police were buried under more than 60 false confessions. But one suspect has emerged as the most compelling, Dr. George Hodel, a brilliant physician with a dark side. The theory, championed by his own son, retired LAPD detective Steve Hodel, is chilling. Dr. Hodel had the surgical training to perform the bisection. He had connections to surrealist artists like Man Ray, whose work bears an eerie resemblance to the way the body was posed. But the smoking gun came from the LAPD's own files. In 1950, they wiretapped Hodel's home. The recordings are gone, but the transcripts survive. On tape, Hodel was caught saying to a visitor, "Supposin' I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. My God, you can't talk to women like that. They'll all talk." He believed he was untouchable, and maybe he was. The transcripts also caught him talking about police payoffs, and shortly after these recordings were made, the LAPD's investigation into their prime suspect was abruptly shut down. This suggests a horrifying second layer to the crime's perfection. It wasn't just forensically unsolvable, it may have been protected by a corrupt system. If the Dahlia was a masterpiece of forensic evasion, our next case is a masterwork of logistical genius. Thanksgiving Eve, 1971. A man in a business suit, calling himself Dan Cooper, boards a flight from Portland to Seattle. It was a different world. No metal detectors, no mandatory ID checks, no reinforced cockpit doors. He calmly orders a bourbon and soda, then passes a note to the flight attendant saying he has a bomb. His demands are oddly specific. $200,000 in used $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and for the plane to fly low and slow under 10,000 feet with the landing gear down. After exchanging the passengers for the cash and chutes in Seattle, he orders the plane to take off for Mexico City. Then, somewhere over the vast, stormy wilderness of southwestern Washington, he does the impossible. He lowers the rear air stair of the Boeing 727 and jumps into... The manhunt was doomed from the start. The search area was huge and rugged. The weather was atrocious. Cooper jumped into a pitch-black forest during a thunderstorm. The FBI's search was so desperate they even used an SR-71 Blackbird spy plane to take reconnaissance photos, but the cloud cover made it useless. This wasn't a failure of detective work, it was a failure of physics. Cooper's genius was in creating an unsolvable recovery problem. He left a crime scene the plane, but then he removed himself from the equation entirely. The few clues he left were dead ends in 1971. He cannily took his ransom note back. He left a clip-on tie, but DNA analysis was decades away, and later attempts on the sample were inconclusive. And in a moment of dark humour that cemented his legend, the press misheard his alias Dan Cooper and forever immortalised him as D.B. Cooper after police questioned an unrelated local man with those initials. Even his expertise was a puzzle. The FBI first thought he was a pro-paratrooper, but later concluded he was an amateur for jumping in such dangerous conditions with a non-steerable parachute. Was this incompetence or calculated misdirection? By presenting a conflicting profile, he sent investigators down a dozen rabbit holes at once. When a young boy found $5,800 of the ransom money rotting on a riverbank in 1980, it only deepened the mystery. It proved he was real, but gave no clue as to his fate. He didn't just beat the system, he exited the game. Our first two killers sought a kind of anonymity. Our third craved the spotlight. The Zodiac killer, who terrorized Northern California in the late 60s and early 70s, made himself unsolvable not by hiding, but by creating a public-facing monster. He attacked young couples in secluded Lover's Lane areas and murdered a taxi driver in the heart of San Francisco. But the murders were just the beginning of his performance. His real crime was the campaign of psychological terror he waged through the mail. He sent dozens of taunting letters and cryptic ciphers to newspapers and police. He named himself Zodiac, created his infamous symbol, and proved his authenticity by revealing details only the killer could know. He sent a piece of a victim's bloody shirt as a trophy. He claimed he was collecting slaves for the afterlife. His ciphers were a direct challenge. The first, the 408 cipher, was cracked by a schoolteacher and his wife within a week. The message was chilling. I like killing people because it is so much fun. But his magnum opus, the 340 cipher, remained a complete mystery for 51 years until a team of amateur codebreakers finally solved it in 2020.
The Zodiac wasn't trying to get away with murder.
He was trying to get credit for it. He injected himself into the investigation, a classic trait of an organized, narcissistic offender. He escalated his threats, promising to blow up a school bus full of children, transforming himself from a serial killer into a domestic terrorist. Here's my controversial take. The Zodiac wasn't a brilliant killer. His attacks were often clumsy. He was a brilliant and terrifying publicist. His product was fear, and his marketing campaign was flawless. We're still obsessed with him, not because his crimes were so clever, but because his letters were. He made his identity the mystery, turning the entire Bay Area into his terrified audience. He became unsolvable by becoming a puzzle, a ghost in the machine of public consciousness. As you can see, the game has completely changed. The forensic ignorance the Dahlia killer relied on, the procedural loopholes Cooper slipped through, and the media landscape the Zodiac manipulated, they're all gone, and the tools that are replacing them are more powerful than any of these killers could have ever imagined. We're about to enter the world of forensic genealogy, where a single strand of hair from 50 years ago can unravel everything. For decades, a case going cold meant exactly that. Evidence degraded, memories faded, and killers grew old and died, taking their secrets with them. The DNA revolution of the 90s changed that, creating the CODIS database to match crime scene DNA to known offenders. But it had limits. It needed a good sample, and it needed the suspect to already be in the system. But now, we have a new weapon, one that is turning the entire concept of the perfect crime on its head. Investigative genetic genealogy, or IgG. Here's how it works. Investigators take a tiny or degraded DNA sample from a cold case, evidence once thought to be useless. They generate a profile and upload it to public genealogy databases, like GEDmatch, where citizens have voluntarily uploaded their own DNA to find relatives. The investigators aren't looking for the killer, they're looking for his second cousin, or his great-aunt's grandson. Using these distant relatives as anchor points, forensic genealogists build out massive family trees, using public records, birth certificates, marriage licenses, obituaries, to triangulate and pinpoint the one person who could have left that DNA sample. The results have been staggering. It's how they caught the Golden State Killer, a monster who haunted California from 1974 to 1986, arrested in his 70s, living a quiet suburban life. And the pace is accelerating. In November 2024, IgG identified the man who raped and murdered 17-year-old Esther Gonzalez in 1979. In August 2024, it identified the killer of Terry McAdams from 1985. Perhaps the most powerful example is the 1987 murder of Roxanne Wood. The case was deemed unsolvable. The DNA sample was microscopic, what one expert called a gnat's eyebrow of DNA. For decades, nothing. Then, in April 2021, Forensic genealogist Gabriela Vargas took the case. In just 4 days, she built a family tree going back to 1797, identified a family with 3 sons, and pointed investigators to Patrick Gilham. They collected his DNA from a discarded cigarette, and it was a perfect match, a 35-year-old ghost caught in 96 hours. This technology fundamentally inverts the logic of the perfect stranger-on-stranger crime. That classic model, where the killer has no connection to the victim or criminal record, used to be the hardest to solve. Now, that anonymity is the killer's greatest liability. Because they aren't in the criminal database, investigators have to use genealogy. The killer's own family, by innocently exploring their ancestry, become a web of genetic informants that leads right back to them. X cannot move through the modern world without leaving a trail, whether it's the digital breadcrumbs from your phone or the microscopic skin cells you shed everywhere you go. The needle in a haystack is no longer a problem when you have an AI-powered magnet. The ghosts of the 20th century are being caught one by one. The equilibrium has been broken. But this leads to a final, unsettling thought. The perfect crime of the past was about spectacle and evasion. The perfect crime of the 21st century won't be a spectacle. It won't have a cool nickname. It will be quiet, subtle, and likely digital or biological. It won't be about getting away with murder, but about committing a murder that is never even recognized as a murder in the first place. The perfect crime has gone from a theatrical performance to a silent, undetectable whisper in the system. The ghosts of the past are being caught. But what new monsters are we creating in the blind spots of our own modern world? What does the next perfect crime look like? Let me know your theories in the comments below.